Okay, good morning everybody. I'm going to try and do a little tutorial this morning. So, unfortunately, the cable that I got to replace the one that was broken by my roommate um, isn't as long as the other one was, so I can't set it up above the light up here. Um, so we're going to try at this angle and see if this works. But what I would like to show you this morning is how I do my resin molds. So the first thing that you're going to need is the Easy Cast. Let's see, can you read that? It's Easy Cast Clear Casting Epoxy, and it's by Casting Craft. And that is these two bottles of liquid. One is fairly clear, one is yellow. You're going, I'm going to say you're going to need, but you don't need. I use these little medicine measuring cups to measure my liquids in. You need to put exactly the same amount of each one into a container and stir it up in order to get a proper mix. I also use these little disposable eyedroppers. They are absolutely fantastic. I used one the other day for the first time because somebody had finally gifted me some, and so I was able to use one the other day, and to get into these little tiny molds and get the right amount in there is just absolutely fantastic. I use a little pin, just a little sewing pin, to pop any bubbles that come up as I'm pouring them. And I take a cookie sheet. I line the cookie sheet with either parchment paper or wax paper, and there's no particular reason, no absolute need to do that, except that to me it makes it easier to clean up and confines the mess that may occur. And then I just put out a variety of molds on the sheet that I want to make. I don't know that I will be able to pour all of them, but I'm going to pour as many as I can, and I don't want to run out of molds and still have resin left and have to rush around to try and find another mold. So this time I have the little bird and 3 flowers. These are roses that stand straight up. These are roses that are at a slight tilt. These are some little tiny flowers. Hard to see what they really will look like. Some more little flowers. Some little teeny tiny star flowers. Some of these little nubbed balls, whatever, like the centers of flowers. Some more little flowers. This is a little girl and little boy angels sitting on a bench. And these two are flowers. We have here some little flat ones and some more roses. I have some little tiny leaves. A fairly large rose. This is just a little cluster of flowers in the oval shape. We have a bunch of little birds here. Some cameos. This is a flower with some greenery that goes out towards each side. Very pretty. Some more little flat flowers. And this one has a butterfly and a bird and an owl and a little bird's nest and a bird sitting on a branch. So these are the molds that I'm going to pour today, as many as I can. So what you need to do is you need to take your container, whatever kind of container you're going to use, and I start out with the white one, and this container will hold 2 ounces, but I don't want to go all the way to the top. I want to give myself some room to pour. So I'm going to pour 3/4 of an ounce into this. Okay, that's 3/4 of an ounce of the first liquid. And then we're going to pour 3/4 of an ounce of the second liquid, which will give me 1.5 ounces, and give me still a little bit of room in the cup to stir. Now, when I first started out doing this, I used to take 2 of these small cups, and they were like only 1 ounce cups. And then you need, I forgot. You need, sorry, come back here. A toothpick, or I mean a popsicle stick. Alright, well, I don't see a small regular popsicle stick. I generally use a regular popsicle stick. But, come on. Get back where you were. Oh, darn. Now look and see what I did. I messed everything up because I had to go turn that, didn't I? Okay. So I have the 2 liquids in here, and you stir it, and it will turn cloudy, and then it will turn clear again. So you stir it until it turns clear again. Anyway, as I was saying, I used to measure them in 2 separate containers and then pour the 2 separate containers into a larger container that didn't have measurements on it. But then I was gifted these larger cups, and it's so much easier just to be able to pour them both in the same cup. Okay, so that's all stirred. Now, I used to just take the cup and try and pour it into the molds and try and get the right amount into the molds, and it, of course, never worked. I always had overflow. But this way here, this is just fantastic. As you can see, I filled up the eyedropper. Then you just take and you just fill up each one of your holes or each one of your molds very slowly, and you don't get any overflow. Make sure that it's gone out to all the little points or sections that it needs to go to, down in all the way down into the bottom of the mold. And that it's flat and even on the top. Now this takes time because doing it with the eyedropper is slower than just pouring it into the mold. But to me, it is so much neater. The resin pieces come out so much nicer. Just take your time. The only bad thing about the eyedropper method is that you do get a few more air bubbles in there that you have to go around and pop. But they pop quite easily. Now, when you're doing molds like this really big flower here, you can just pour at least the majority of it in there. And then I just go around and top them off with the eyedropper. Also, if you get too much in your mold from just pouring it, as long as it stays right within the mold, I mean, doesn't go down the edges of the mold and into um, off to the paper, you can go in with your eyedropper and suck a bit out. you have to use all of the resin that you make up um, when you make it up, because if you don't, it will dry in the cup and you won't be able to save it and use it later. Okay, now I'm almost out of resin. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the ones that I have poured and make sure that they are all complete before I use up the last of the resin. And you have to go through on remember the little flower, the bird that I held up first? That has a couple of little sections where you really need to make sure that the resin has gotten into those, because the top of the mold is almost closed off together, but there is part of the wing up in here and part of the tail down here that you need to make sure that the resin has gotten completely up in there. And then I go and I pop any bubbles that are on the pieces. You have a good amount of time before this starts to set up. So just take your time and make sure that all of the bubbles are popped. Some of them get very tricky and are hard to pop. But just get in there with your little pen, move the bubbles over to the edge, and try and kind of flick them along the edge. And the more time you spend making sure that everything is right here, the better it will look when it's dried. I've had so many come out that I kind of rushed and didn't take care of bubbles, or and they show when they're dry, of course, and they're really not that good. Not something that you would want to give to somebody, or and of course these will all come out clear, and one needs a little bit more. They'll all come out clear, and I will show you in a day or two. I'll do another video and I'll show you how I color my my resin pieces. There are many, many different ways of doing it. You can use chalk, you can use paint, you can use inks, you can use colored pencils, just all different kinds of ways. But great big bubble there that doesn't want to pop. This one here has all kinds of little bubbles in it. And the reason is that there are so many little places down deep inside of this mold that catch the air before the resin fills it up, that all kinds of little bubbles come to the surface on this one. Even when you're cleaning the bubbles and you're tapping on the stuff that's down inside, it creates causes more bubbles to come to the surface. But you want to make sure that all of these bubbles come to the surface so that you can pop them. Otherwise, you'll have a bubble deep down in your piece, and you don't want that. So the more you play with it, the more perfect you make it, the more perfect it will look in the end. Now, ones like these cameos here, they usually come up pretty good the very first pour. All right, so I appear to have all of these are full. All of the bubbles have been popped. Now I'll take and I'll use up the rest of my resin. Because I know I don't need any more to fill in the ones that I've already done. I'm just playing around the edge of this, making sure that the resin gets all the way in to the little petals, all the way around. Haven't looked at my camera lately. I hope I'm still in frame. And then you'll just set this aside, and it will take, I don't know, I don't remember how many hours it actually takes. I generally just set it aside until the next day. So overnight, it all sets up. one more glance over everything. Sometimes some of these molds are so deep that it takes a while for everything to settle down into them, and you'll go back to it and it'll be lower than what it should be. Okay, so I've used all my resin. I've made sure that all the bubbles have been popped. I'm going back again and popping more bubbles that have shown up. I've noticed that this one here, and it looks like it's going to have to stay that way. This one here didn't get filled up all the way. So I'm desperately scraping everything that I can to try and get just a tad bit more in there. It's looking better. And this is another reason why I love these eyedroppers, because I can borrow a little bit from one in order to fill another that maybe either went down in the process or because of air bubbles or didn't get filled up properly the first time. So anyway, that's how I pour my molds. I will now set these aside and let them dry until either this evening. They'll probably be dry this evening. So I may unmold them this evening. I may wait until tomorrow. It doesn't matter how long you wait now to unmold them. They're going to come out of the mold just very easily, no matter which way. But you do need to wait and make sure that it's completely dry, because there may be a little petal on one of these deep flowers that hasn't completely dried yet or whatever. So when you go to unmold them, make sure that it's releasing all the way from the mold. Don't rush it. Just let them set for 24 hours. And then you're sure that everything is going to be completely dry. So I will come back tomorrow probably and do the unmolding for you and show you how I color some of them, some of the different ways that I color them. So I hope you enjoyed that. Have a good day, and I will catch you all later.